Welcome back to The Last Boot, the channel where football is more than a game. It is passion. It is pain. It is glory. It is heartbreak. We tell the stories behind the moments that shook the world. The tears. The triumphs. The players who gave everything. And the ones who lost it all. I am so glad you are here today. If you are new here, please subscribe and join the Last Boot family. We are growing every single day and I do not want you to miss a single story. Today we are talking about the most mysterious and most magical underdog story in the entire history of the World Cup. A team from one of the most closed and secretive countries on earth. A team nobody knew. A team nobody expected anything from. A team that shocked the entire world and then vanished back into silence. This is the story of North Korea at the 1966 World Cup. Let us find out. In the history of the World Cup there have been many upsets. Many surprises. Many moments when a smaller nation rose up and defeated a giant. But none of them carry the mystery and the magic and the sheer impossibility of what North Korea did at the 1966 World Cup in England. It remains to this day one of the most extraordinary stories the tournament has ever produced. And one of the least told. To understand the story you first have to understand where these players came from. North Korea in 1966 was one of the most isolated countries on earth. It still is. But in the 1960s the country had only recently emerged from the devastation of the Korean War. It was a closed totalitarian state with almost no connection to the outside world. Its people knew very little about life beyond their borders. And the outside world knew almost nothing about them. The North Korean football team that qualified for the 1966 World Cup were complete unknowns. Nobody had footage of them playing. Nobody had scouted them. Nobody had any idea what to expect. They arrived in England as the most mysterious team in the tournament's history. The press did not know their names. The other teams did not know their style. They were a blank page in a tournament full of known quantities. Most people expected them to lose every match and go home quietly. The football world was politely waiting for them to fail. They did not fail. Their opening matches were difficult. They lost to the Soviet Union. They drew with Chile. But even in those early games there were signs that this team was different. They were organized. They were disciplined. They were fast. They pressed relentlessly. They worked for each other with a collective spirit that was unlike anything else in the tournament. They played as if every single one of them would run through a wall for the player beside them. And then came Italy. Italy were one of the favorites for the tournament. A proud footballing nation with a long and successful World Cup history. They had experienced players. They had quality throughout the squad. They were expected to beat North Korea comfortably and progress from the group stage without any difficulty. What happened instead became one of the most stunning results in World Cup history. Pak Duik. A dentist by profession. A midfielder by calling. Scored the only goal of the match in the 42nd minute. North Korea beat Italy 1-0. One of the greatest upsets the World Cup had ever seen. The Italian players were so ashamed that when they returned home they were pelted with vegetables by their own fans at the airport. The humiliation was complete and total. But North Korea were not finished. They qualified for the quarterfinals. And there they faced Portugal. and Eusébio, the most dangerous player in the tournament. The man you have already heard about on this channel. And North Korea started that match as if they had not read the script. They scored. Then they scored again. Then they scored a third. Within 25 minutes they were 3-0 ahead against one of the best teams in the tournament. The world could not believe what it was watching. This team from a country most people could not find on a map was 3 goals ahead of Portugal at a World Cup quarter-final. It was beyond extraordinary. It was beyond any reasonable expectation of what football could produce. And then Eusébio happened. As you know, he scored 4 goals. Portugal won 5-3. And North Korea's incredible journey was over. But here is what makes this story truly unique. Here is what separates it from every other underdog story in football history. When the North Korean players went home, they disappeared. Completely. Totally. As if they had never existed. The country's government said nothing about them publicly for decades. Some reports suggested the players were punished for losing that quarter-final after being 3 goals ahead. Some reports suggested they were celebrated as heroes. Nobody outside North Korea knew the truth. The players gave no interviews. They made no appearances. They vanished back behind the closed doors of one of the world's most secretive states. For almost 40 years the world wondered what had happened to them. Where they were. Whether they were alive. Whether they had been celebrated or punished. Whether they had families and lives and happiness after that extraordinary summer in England. Then in 2002 a documentary filmmaker managed to travel to North Korea and find some of the surviving players from that 1966 squad. What he found was deeply moving. The players were old men by then. But their eyes still lit up when they talked about England. About the crowds. About the matches. About the noise and the color and the joy of that summer. About the Italian match. About the Portuguese match. About those 25 minutes when they were 3 goals ahead and the whole world was watching. They remembered everything. Every detail. As if it had happened yesterday. As if the intervening decades had not dimmed the memory by even a single watt. The people of Middlesbrough, where North Korea had played their group stage matches, had adopted this mysterious team during the tournament. They had cheered for them. Fallen in love with them. And when those same supporters found out decades later what had happened to the players, they were deeply moved. Middlesbrough invited the surviving North Korean players back to the city. And those old men walked out onto the same pitch where they had played all those years ago. And the crowd cheered for them again. It was one of the most beautiful moments in football history. Old men. From a country the world barely understood. Being welcomed back by people who had never forgotten them. Who had carried the memory of that extraordinary team for nearly 4 decades. North Korea never qualified for another World Cup until 2010. And when they did, they lost all 3 group stage matches without scoring a single goal. The magic of 1966 was not repeated. But 1966 will never be forgotten. That team of unknowns from the most mysterious country on earth who came to England and shocked Italy and nearly knocked out Portugal and made the whole world stop and stare. They played with a collective spirit and a determination and a joy that transcended politics and borders and all the complications of the world they came from. They played football. Pure and simple and beautiful. And for a few weeks in the summer of 1966 they made the impossible look completely ordinary. The most mysterious World Cup story ever told. And one of the most beautiful. That is it for today's story on The Last Boot. If this video moved you, please give it a big thumbs up. Share this with every football fan you know. Hit subscribe and join the Last Boot family. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video. Until then, keep the passion alive.